All right, folks, Yishai Fleisher here in beautiful Hebron. Have you ever noticed that they're always coming up with the new nasty narrative against Israel? The first big one was genocide. You're genociding them. There's a genocide out there. Oh, yeah, it's not a genocide. Sorry, just joking. You're just actually fighting a war against the jihad, right? And then the next one that they have out there today is that you're taking all the money from America. You're stealing the money from America. It's billions and billions of dollars. No, actually, we're making money for America. Jewish people have always made a lot of money and have brought down a lot of blessings for the United States. To make it look like Israel's like siphoning off money from America is just absurd, not true, silly. But it's a narrative out there. It's a type of blood libel. And a recurring one that is always out there is settler violence, extremist settler violence. Now, the Jewish people that live in Judea and Samaria, so-called settlers, are holding on to the land of Israel, pushing back on the Palestinian land grab, and doing everything to strengthen Israel, to protect the highlands, to protect our heritage, to protect our history and our story, and to push back against the folks that we already know from October 7th, right? The jihad that wants to take over our land, and it's Euro-assisted. Sometimes it's even America-assisted to try to shrink this land, to keep us from pushing back against bad policy of giving away our land. Because giving away your land to your enemies is dumb and also stupid. So let's not do that. Still, though, the recurring narrative, the recurring theme of extremist settler violence is this recurring blood libel. And I was on I-24, an Israeli news channel, and guess what? They're mimicking that same narrative that, look, there's a rise in settler violence. None of that is actually true. But here's the way I answer the critics and the challengers at I-24 News, pushing back on the false narrative, part of that blood libel, part of the many blood libels against Israel, telling us that the Jews that live in Judea and Samaria are doing bad, instead of telling us the real truth, which is Jews of Judea and Samaria are holding on to the heartland of the Holy Land. Check it out.
Now, there have been more reports of extremist settler violence in the West Bank. Just today alone, Palestinian media outlets have reported that 7 Palestinians were injured in an alleged extremist settler attack in the area of the West Bank village of Jabba and a nearby Bedouin encampment north of Jerusalem. Now, to help us unpack all of this, we are joined now by a spokesperson for the Jewish community in Hebron, Yishai Fleisher. Yishai, what is your reaction to what happened over Nablus over the weekend and, to the allegations that we're seeing an uptick in extremist settler attacks over the month of October?
Yeah, it's a classic kind of provocation by so-called farmers, but oftentimes folks paid by the Palestinian Authority, which we know pays terrorists. We know they pay murderers that are sitting in our prisons. So they also pay farmers. They pay folks to come close. Lands that are state lands, Jewish controlled. They come close. They endanger Jewish communities there. Not violent settlers, not extremist settlers, but rather extremist jihadis posing as farmers, trying to endanger our Jewish communities. And people are responding sometimes. Most of the time, IDF responding. Most of the time, police responding and dealing with this provocation. The other question is, the whole report that I just heard now, you said that the only information that you have is from the Palestinian Authority, again, the folks that pay murderers, or from the UN. Let me remind you that Gazan, every UNRWA school had in it jihadist rockets, missiles, arms, and terrorism that led to October 7th. So you have two organizations, the UN and the PA. They're reporting this. Of course they're reporting this. This is part of their blood libel. This is part of their way to besmirch Israel. Oh, Israel is hurting the innocent Palestinian farmer. We've heard this narrative. It's a blood libel. It comes around every time this year. And yet the army is not saying that there's an uptick in violence. The police is not saying there's an uptick in violence. And so therefore these reports are to be seen as very questionable. And we do have Israel has police and army to ensure security, and they do. So let's just call it what it is. Provocation, not an uptick, and police are handling it just fine.
It's interesting because, there are critics who say that the Israeli government is essentially not doing much to actually tackle this issue of extremist settler violence. They say in the response overall has been pretty much lax. As somebody who lives in the West Bank, what can you say about that?
I can say that the language of extremist settler violence, I would turn that to the heroes that are holding on to Judea and Samaria and pushing back on many kinds of jihadism. There are many kinds of jihadism. October 7th is one kind. Land grab in Judea and Samaria is another. Hamas is the strong ideological entity here in Judea and Samaria, in what you call the West Bank, what we call the ancestral homeland of the Jewish people. And so you have young heroes holding on to state lands that the local municipalities recognize, pushing back on elements that want to destroy them, that want to do an October 7th on them. And to distinguish between what happened in Gaza and what's happening in Judea and Samaria is illogical, because in reality, these are the same forces. It's the same Hamas. It's just that they dress up as farmers now, just like they dressed up as UN workers or media workers in Gaza. They're dressing up as farmers and attacking. Now, if there is so-called violence that comes from the Jews that has crossed the line and is illegal, guess what? We've got a police and an army to deal with it, and there's nothing lax about it. There's nothing lax about it at all. Israel takes the law very seriously, but we have to remember who the enemy is. The enemy is the jihad that wants to destroy the Jewish state, and they want to do it piece by piece, destroying the Jewish communities in these places, and the Jews holding on there are indeed heroes.
All right, that's Yishai Fleisher, spokesperson for the Jewish community in Hebron.
All right, folks, Yishai Fleisher here in beautiful Hebron. I want to bless you and thank you so much for standing with the settlers, okay? We're not settlers, we're resettlers. We're resettling this land, we're beautifying this land, we're strengthening this land, and you're a part of it. If you love what we do, then remember that there's ways to support. One of those ways is buymeacoffee.com/Yishai. It's a great way to support the programming. And another way is Fight for Israel with the number 4 in the middle, fightforisrael.org, which is our way to beautify this land, to buy tractors, to renovate old biblical sites and make them beautiful once again. So fightforisrael.org and buymeacoffee.com/Yishai. And don't forget our YouTube channel, Yishai Fleisher TV. And we have a great web store there. And we have opportunity to like, comment, subscribe, and become a member. So it's all there. Don't forget, the most important thing is if you want to plug into what we're doing, read that Bible, read that Torah, remember the story of the Jewish people's initial efforts in the land of Israel, as is remembered here in Hebron with the tombs of the patriarchs and matriarchs. But also the promise that God gave the Jewish people to return. This is the great return. The return of the Jewish people to the land of Israel is the greatest miracle and the most overt way to show that God is alive, that God is real, and his promises are alive and extant forever. God bless you wherever you are. Lots of love and lots of blessings from the land of blessings, and shalom.